Hey there, how there, hello, Jeff Cutter, and welcome you to a very special edition of PC Replay Basketball. As you can see on the exhibition setup, we have ourselves two Golden State teams, the 92-93 Golden State Warriors and the 2007-2008 Golden State Warriors, both coached by Don Nelson with various results for August 9th, 2026. Why are we doing this? Well, as you can see on the screen, Don Nelson, legendary player, died at age 86. He actually coached Milwaukee, New York, Dallas, and Golden State. He played for the University of Iowa as a player and got 5 NBA titles with the Boston Celtics. And his number 19 was even retired in 1978. So you must really be good if your freaking number is retired by the Celtics. But I mean, like Don Nelson winning 5 NBA titles with the Celtics. I mean, when you think about Havlicek, Cousy, Russell, and Casey Jones, and Sam Jones with all those titles, he actually had the most coaching wins. In 2010, he passed Lenny Wilkins for this mark and got his 1,333rd career win. He only won two more to 1,335, which was the most regular season wins until Greg Popovich broke that mark in 2022. Nelson was inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame in 2015. So he grew up in Sherwood, Illinois. Um, he went through a lot of things. The University of Iowa recruited him. Of course, NCAA freshmen were not allowed to play varsity, so they had to play junior varsity. Um, so anyway, things looked good. He helped Iowa take second in the Big Ten. Unfortunately, there was an academic eligibility issue, and 4 of the 5 starters were ineligible. Don Nelson was the only one that wasn't. Iowa took second in the Big Ten, and then they didn't do well as a senior. So yeah, the Big Ten was an NBA players' factory, if you will. He had 21.1 points in his Iowa career. He was the all-time scorer at first. And then in the 1962 draft, with the 17th pick, he got picked by the Chicago Siffers. This was the team, I do believe, that moved to Baltimore to become the Bullets, who then went to Washington to become the Washington Bullets / Wizards. He would play alongside Walt Bellamy and Terry Dischinger, pretty good players in the Big Ten themselves. Chicago only won 25 games in that year and moved to Baltimore. And then the Lakers picked him up on waivers from the Siffers, playing all 80 games in the 1964 season and then dropped his season thing and all that. Nelson was used in the playoffs. He got to the 1965 NBA Finals as a Laker against the Celtics. He averaged 7.2 points per game, but they lost in 5 games. After 2 seasons, he would leave Los Angeles, and lo and behold, the Boston Celtics, somehow, in some way, before the start of the 1965 season, signed him, which is kind of ironic. Nelson was a 6th man off the bench, meaning that he was the best player off the bench. You had your 5 starters, and then you had someone who could come on easily. He would be alongside Bill Russell, Sam Jones, Satch Sanders, John Havlicek, and Casey Jones on the team. He won in 66, 68, 69, 74, and 76 with the team. And all that, which was pretty impressive. He averaged 14 points in the NBA Finals in 1968. In 1969, he had one of the most famous shots in playoff history. Game 7 of the Finals against the LA Lakers. He had a jumper from the foul line, which bounced through the basket after hitting the back rim and bouncing several feet straight up. The Celtics secured that title, and, that was amazing. He still played in 74 when the Celtics, after rebuilding, won 56 games and won the title from Milwaukee. Nelson and Havlicek had JoJo Wade, Dave Cowens, Paul Westphal, Paul Silas, and Don Chaney helping them out. So, anyway, that was just impressive what he could do. Nelson actually was part of the job in Game 7 of the finals in Milwaukee in 1974 to stop Abdul-Jabbar. Boston ended up winning that title, and then he won. His last season was 1976, winning a title. So he finished his career as a Celtic and winning his 5th title. He basically was big, and Boston decided to retire his number in 1978. So anyway, Don Nelson's family sat in a restaurant. Don said there were three choices. He could sell cars, become an NBA referee, or accept an assistant's job under Larry Costello of Milwaukee. They all voted five. They all voted for the Milwaukee job. So he did all that. And then he was named head coach after Larry Costello resigned at 3:15. So Nelson was head coach of Milwaukee in 1976-77. He was the GM and had his wheeling and dealing. He would actually send Swen Nader to the Buffalo Braves, soon to be LA Clippers, and turned the draft pick he picked up into Marcus Johnson, who actually was decent for Milwaukee. He would trade Kent Benson, Indiana icon, to Detroit for Bob Lanier, which was big for Milwaukee. And then he would make a massive trade to the San Diego Clippers before the 1984-85 season. Of course, that was the last season the Clippers played in San Diego. Getting rid of Marcus Johnson, Junior Bridgman, among others, for Terry Cummings, Craig Hodges, and Ricky Pierce. He would then trade Alden Lister to Seattle for Jack Sigma. So he made them legit in the 1980s. He had a system called Nelly Ball. As the pop-up says, it's a fast-paced running gun offense relying on smaller, more athletic players who can create mismatches by outrunning their opponents. Kind of like the Golden State Warriors kind of did with Steph Curry and all them. It actually helped. Don Nelson and his Milwaukee Bucks won 7 straight Central Division titles with 50-plus wins in each of those seasons. He was head coach of the year in 83 and 85. And all that. Unfortunately, though, they just couldn't do anything about it. They would end up losing the Eastern Conference Finals many times to Boston or Philly. Nelson would resign as head coach of the Bucks after losing to the Celtics in the 87 playoffs. He had 540 wins with them. That was pretty good. Don Nelson did part-time work as a color analyst for TBS in the 87-88 season. However, Jim Fitzgerald, who was the former Bucks owner, actually purchased the Golden State Warriors and knew Don Nelson, so he gave Don Nelson the chance. He made the running gun offense. He had the unconventional lineup that had 3 guards: Mitch Richmond, Tim Hardaway, and Sarunas Marciulionis. Sorry if I'm butchering names. He put 2 forwards, Chris Mullin and Rod Higgins, in there. And it worked. And then his thing was run TMC for Hardaway, Richmond, and Mullin, who all are in the Basketball Hall of Fame. So anyway, Nelson was named Coach of the Year in 1992, the third time. He retooled the team. He was the guy who drafted Latrell Sprewell out of Alabama in 92. He actually traded Penny Hardaway to Orlando for Chris Webber because Orlando drafted Chris Webber, but I think they didn't want Chris Webber, so they traded him to Golden State for Penny Hardaway. It was a big win-win trade because Chris Webber was decent, although it was for Sacramento, and Penny Hardaway helped Orlando out. But Don Nelson wanted Webber to play center, not power forward. So anyway, after one season with Golden State, Nelson traded Webber to Washington for Tom Gugliotta and 3 first-round picks, which was amazing. He decided to resign February 13, 1995. And then he actually got the chance to coach the U.S. team at Dream Team 2 at the 1994 World Championship Basketball Tournament in Toronto. It was actually supposed to be in Yugoslavia, but because of all those problems over there, Toronto ended up getting the World Basketball Championships. They played at games at the Skydome and Maple Leaf Gardens. Dream Team 2 led in the gold medal. He had the roster: Derek Coleman, Joel Dumars, Tim Hardaway, who would have been on the team, but he got injured, Kevin Johnson, Larry Johnson, Sean Kemp, Dan Marley, Reggie Millers, Alonzo Mourning, Shaq, Mark Price, Steve Smith, not the football player, but the basketball player for Atlanta, Isaiah Thomas, who was injured, and Dominique. The Americans took care of Spain, China, Brazil, Australia, Puerto Rico, Russia, Greece, and then Russia in the finals. So Don Nelson won the World Championship in Toronto, of all places, of course, too. The Knicks actually hired him instead of Chuck Daly once Pat Riley left for Miami. So he actually did decently. He was 34 and 25 and all that. And Nelson actually suggested the Knicks trade Patrick Ewing so that they could get Shaq. Big mistake. He got canned March 8th, 1996, and Jeff Van Gundy took over from him. And then Dallas gave him a good offer being head coach and general manager. So he did his job. In 1998, he massively made a couple of big draft day trades. He picked up Dirk Nowitzki, who was drafted by the Milwaukee Bucks, but got traded to Dallas for the rights to Robert Tracker Trailer, which actually worked out as one of the biggest one-sided trades around. And then he picked up Steve Nash from Phoenix, who spent a few years for Phoenix. And then Nash went to Dallas, and then years later he went back to Phoenix. Anyway, the trio of Nash, Finley, and Nowitzki began the foundation. He helped the Mavericks win 4 consecutive 50-win seasons. They had a 60-win season when they reached the conference finals against San Antonio. Nowitzki got injured, and they lost to the Spurs in that thing. Nelson introduced the hack-a-shack defense to send them to the line and all that. Don Nelson wanted Mark Cuban, the owner of the Mavericks, to match the max contract by the Suns. Cuban didn't, and Steve Nash made them bite the bullet with back-to-back MVPs. He then decided to step down as head coach March 2005, and then named his son Donnie Nelson as his replacement as GM. He said that he lost interest in staying with Dallas once Nash was gone. He had 339 wins at a 575 winning percentage. Then he went back to Golden State for his second stint. Chris Mullin, strangely enough, who was under Don Nelson's thing as Golden State Warriors, was the team's GM. And his style of coaching helped Baron Davis, Monty Ellis, Matt Barnes, Jay Rich, Jason Richardson, and Andres Biardris do well. And then Mullin orchestrated a trade to get Al Harrington and Steven Jackson from the Pacers, even though those guys were part of the Malice at the Palace. And it worked. Monty Ellis was the most improved player. The Warriors were 16-5 and got to the 2007 playoffs as the 8th seed. And if you know your NBA history, you know darn well 2007 Dallas, Golden State, need I say more. But of course, not all of you are. So Nelson would play Dallas in the first round of the playoffs. Ironically, that was the last team he played. The Mavs had the NBA's best record. They looked like they were going to win the NBA championship and get that title, which Miami got last year. However, somehow in some freaking way, Golden State won over Dallas in 6 games. And Game 6 was one of the loudest games in NBA history in Golden State's arena. It was actually the largest upset in the history of NBA playoffs, but the Mavericks winning 67 games and the Warriors won 42, so it was a 25-game difference. Everybody knows about the Nuggets Sonics thing. I thought it was more than 25 with that one. Anyway, Golden State fell to Utah in the second round. However, he became the first coach in NBA history to steer 3 teams to a first round series victory ranked 7 or 8. Golden State beat the Jazz in 89 and the Spurs in 91 as the 7th seed to their number 2. Chris Webber signed with the Warriors and reunited with Nelson. Unfortunately, though, injuries would force him to retire. The Warriors won 48 games, but missed by 2 games. It's kind of weird. They won 42 and were the 8th seed and beat Dallas the first year. And then the second year, they won 48 games and they missed the playoffs by 2. Really? Anyway, the Warriors were plunged into mediocrity, going 29 wins and then 26. However, it got the Golden State Warriors the 7th pick in the 2009 draft. And Minnesota famously had decided to draft, what was it, Johnny Gomes? No, not John. Ryan Gomes and Ricky Rubio instead of Steph Curry at guard. It actually worked, kind of. Rubio was decent. Gomes wasn't. But, Don Nelson wanted Golden State to draft Stephen Curry. And guess what? He got his man. Nelson decided to resign in 2010. And all that. And ended his coaching career with 1,335 wins. Popovich, 12 years later, Popovich would break that record. He married his wife, Joy Wolfgram, at Oakland Coliseum in 1991, having a total of 6 children from prior marriages. So, anyway. You know, Nelson's son Donnie was the general manager of Dallas and assistant coach for a while. And Donnie Nelson became the assistant coach for Lithuania in 92, 96, and 2000 Olympics. So, yeah, he had a hand in a lot of things. He had prostate cancer surgery in 2000. He graduated from the University of Iowa with a degree in physical education 2012. Yeah, he wanted his degree coursework. The University of Iowa said that his teaching through NBA coaching actually worked and said he can get his degree in physical education. So he lived in Maui with at poker games with Willie Nelson, Woody Harrelson, and Owen Wilson. Um, he died, of course, at 86. He had stroke 3 weeks where went to hospice, where Tommy John is nowadays. So his number 19 retired by the Celtics. That's big. I just wish Golden State retired something of his. So yeah, Boston 5 titles as a player. His head coaching record not half bad. He never got to the NBA Finals as a head coach. He lost the yeah, he never got to that mark. Anyway, let's play. I've talked too long about that guy. Well, dude, he is the second best wins for a coach. So let's play. Let's play. All right. So we're gonna do AI sub and strat. We're gonna do the first few minutes until someone subs off, and then we'll go to the fourth quarter. So the 93 Run TMC team with Tim Hardaway from. Oh, I guess we have to tip off before we do anything here. Tim Hardaway from UTEP, Latrell Sprewell from Bama, Chris Mullin from St. John's, Tyrone Hill from, I would say Wake Forest. Xavier, okay, and Victor Alexander from I don't know where, Iowa State. For the 2018, Baron Davis from high school, UCLA. How did I not know that? Monta Ellis, I can't remember where he's from. Nah, he's undrafted. Steven Jackson from Iowa, I say, but no. Butler Community College. Al Harrington from Providence. I thought it was Providence. I guess it was high school. And Andres Berderis for Lithuania. All right. How did it make the first basket of the game? It's not good, but Jackson. No good. Ellis good. Harrington hacks him. Held up the line for two. 1-2, buckle my shoe. Budrich makes a bucket to make it 6-6. Baron Davis with the foul. 3-pointer for Hardaway. Poof! He puts it in. Davis misses a shot. Fast break. 5-2-5. Personal foul by Budrich. Sprewell on the line. Only one. Sprewell foul. So Spencer and Gatling are coming in. So we'll autoplay to the final. What do we have? Final 3 minutes. It's 123 for the old school team, 111 for the new school team. Here we go. Baron misses a shot. Budrich will get Alexander to hack him for foul number 4. Budrich to the line. Makes both. 123, 113. Hardaway for 3. No. Harrington misses a shot. Fast break layup the other way. And Latrell's now got 27 with Mullins 7's assist. 3-pointer on the way. Poof. Steven Jackson makes it. He's now down to 9. Hardaway makes a 2-pointer. He's at 22. Baron for 3. No. And a loose ball foul on Budrich. They're going to probably kill the clock. Mullen now has 24. Baron turns the ball over. Now misses the shot. Hyper shot for Budrich. Good. It's 129, 118. This game's practically over. And this game's over. And Golden State wins 129, 118. The 93 team outscored their opponents in every quarter except for the first at Oracle. So the 24, every starter got 20 points except for Victor Alexander. Well, he's not much a point scorer. 27 from Sprewell, 22 from Hardaway, 24 from Mullen, 22 from Hill. Tim Hardaway did get a technical foul. So 42 minutes of play from Mullen, Andre Spencer, Chris Gatling, March Nunez, Judd Bushler, and Sean Higgins also played too. Joe Courtney and Keith Jennings did not play coach's decision. So, yeah, 27 points. The new school team, 19 points from Steven Jackson with Harrington Beatrice, Davis, and Ellis. They all scored double digits. Azubuike, Franco Petris, Chris Webber was on this team. Marco Bellinelli, Matt Barnes also played. No Brendan Wright or CJ Watson on the squad. So the recap, if you will, 93 Golden State, 55% from the field, which is pretty good. 08 Golden State only 41%. Free throws, the 08 team did better, 79 to 65. 3-pointers, it was close, 37 to 33 for the 08 squad. Assists wise, 93 Golden State won by 7. They stole one more ball. Rebounds went to the 08 team by 12. Blocks, 08 by 1. 93 Golden State only 8 turnovers. And they committed only 21 fouls to go 08's 26. Latrell, 27 points to lead the team. Hardaway had 16 assists. Tyronn Hill had 16 rebounds. Steven Jackson, 19 points for Golden State. Baron Davis with assists with 8, and Beatrins with 19 rebounds. So these two teams really went balls out, but the 93 squad somehow won. Yeah, they're both ugly. And the worst part is there's no PC replay basketball season between 93 and 2008. Even if it was like 2000 and 2001, I would probably put like things with the Raptors, but I just can't. That sucks. But anyway, that's all I've got. I'm Jeff Diamond. Rest in peace, Don with Nelson, and adieu.